Welcome back to the Energetics Podcast. I am your host, Kara Bunde-Dunn, and today we are diving into a conversation that blends body, mind, and energy in a way that I know will resonate deeply with so many of you. So my guest today is Alec Kassin. He is the founder of Pain-Free Comeback, a powerful movement and method that helps people shift out of pain, not just manage, but actually heal from it, by reconnecting to their nervous system, their awareness, and their innate power to heal. So whether you're navigating chronic pain, emotional stress, or just the invisible weight of that old pushing through mindset, this episode is to show you a different way of being. So welcome to the pod. I'm so happy you're here.
Thanks, Kara. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me
Oh,
on.
that's awesome. Well, we know each other because we both were in a program called the Inner MBA, like an MBA in inner work is what I like to say. It's an MBA in inner work.
Yeah.
And we've had
Beautiful
some nice,
experience.
yeah, totally. We've had some friends in common. So we got introduced to each other and I was reaching out to you. I'm like, will you come on the pod? I think your story is so fascinating.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking me. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, the Inner MBA has brought. I owe it so much. So it's cool that we're connected through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want you just to start with, for you, like being a professional cyclist, semi-pro cyclist, and living in that world, having this like chronic back pain that took place for you, and really like learning how to shift that seems to be
Mm.
your origin story of where this whole world has come from, of what you do now. Will you just anchor us a little bit in your story and how you got to where you are?
Yes, happy to do so. So it. I could start with the back pain, but it kind of goes back further than that. So I grew up in Northern California and um, relatively young for my grade, smaller stature, more sensitive kid. And when I was around 13 years old, I found the sport of cycling. And I was always relatively energetic and athletic. But cycling, I started it and I was pretty awful at it actually. And just something called me to stick with it. And by the end of my senior year in high school, I was on a junior development team with some high level people who went on to become professionals. And cycling was kind of like part of my life. It's like if you ever have that thing, um, I've seen this in different points of my life where something I just kind of become obsessed about it, and
Yeah.
cycling was that thing. It was I was going to fast forward. I was going to college, my freshman year of college, and my life was kind of centered around cycling. It was like eat, sleep, breathe, ride, and like college and all that stuff. Like yeah, mom and dad, I'm still taking my classes, but I
Did
want
you
to
have
be a
one of those
professional
cycling
cyclist.
bikes in your dorm room with the wheel off so you could like train and rock it?
I had three
Oh,
actually in mine.
nice.
I had a
What a
time
good
trial.
dorm mate.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, my dorm mate was not super pleased. But I had a road bike, I had a time trial bike, I had a mountain bike, and then
Oh,
I had a
nice.
commuter bike that just was outside. That was
Yeah.
fine. But it shows how dedicated I was,
Yeah.
right? And cycling for me was a way to prove my self worth, to kind of show the kind of subconsciously show other people it's like yeah, I can, even though I'm not as big or not as strong or as
Hmm.
fit or can't hit a baseball as far as you, like I can ride up a mountain faster than you. And when it was the summer after my freshman year of college, so I was 18 years old, and I had just entered a new category of racing. I had held a professional mountain bike racing license. Now when I say professional, I was eligible to race against pros, but I was not being paid, so that's why I say kind of like semi-pro. But on the road, I had switched to the road biking from mountain biking because I had too many just crashes and accidents on the mountain. You can see I fractured a wrist
Oh,
and
yeah. He has a
had a
good
plate put
scar.
in and taken out. Yeah. So I was a road cyclist, and I was in this new category where I was going to be racing against professionals.
And road cycling
And
is like Tour de France type stuff.
yeah, that was like the
Okay.
dream, like the ultimate,
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And like, that's my goal. And I was due, this is June of 2011, and I was due to do a race that Lance Armstrong had won 2 years prior. It was a local race. It's not, a huge one, but I was going to be in that same category, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And 10 days before this race, I was out on a training ride, just riding along. And all of a sudden, I felt this lightning sharp pain in my back. It was as if it was like somebody stuck a lightning bolt and my whole back went into spasm. And the pain was so bad, I actually I couldn't flex my back at all. I had to stand on the bike upright all the way home. And I saw a chiropractor and they're like, hey, don't worry, in 2 weeks, you're going to be back on top.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 2 weeks turned to 4 weeks, turned to 8, turned to months, and I just wasn't getting better. My whole season was going down the drain. All of the training that I had done was going away. And I was diagnosed, finally got an MRI, and I was diagnosed with a ruptured spinal disc, L4, L5, and a herniated L5S1. And the doctor was like, well, pretty sure this is what's causing your pain. And from there, saw other specialists. I got nerve root injections into my back, which helped for like 2 days. And eventually the pain got so bad that on the second day of the new semester, about 8 months after my original pain came on, um, the pain just became intolerable. And I had to take medical leave from college,
Oh
and
my gosh.
I was partially bedridden at home, depressed, on painkillers, had suicidal thoughts, and um, essentially was asking myself, is this going to be the rest of my life? I have
Yeah.
relatives who've had back pain since they were 18, and they're in their 60s now. And it was not only my cycling life was just going down the drain, and my identity, but
Yeah.
also relationships were really hard. It's like when you're a teenager or you're in your early 20s, it's hard for people to understand what chronic pain is like.
Right.
So that's I found myself at a really really low point there, and everything. Well, and I'd tried all the physical means to heal, right? I'd gone to specialists, physical therapists,
Yeah.
chiropractors, acupuncturists, done all
All
the
the
things, and
Western traditional things.
all the Western traditional things, and some of the other
And some of
things
the
too,
Eastern
like some of
so
the Eastern
all the
stuff.
things.
Yeah,
All from
exactly.
all far reaching places. Yeah.
And nothing was working. And it wasn't until my recovery really started when actually I had a physical therapist who, he was like this old school brusque guy who kind of squat, no BS. And I remember I was doing an exercise with him once, and I said, oh, I have a little bit of pain doing this. It was like a squat exercise. And he just looks at me and he's like, so what? And I was like, wait, but pain's a bad thing. I shouldn't do this exercise and have pain. He said,
Yeah.
no, like actually you expect some pain doing these exercises as you start to get better. It's like, oh, wait, that's really interesting, because I'd have always learned if there's pain,
Yeah.
something is wrong. And that was like the first foray into starting to understand, oh, maybe like my response to this pain has actually been increasing this pain. The attention that I've been giving it,
Mm,
attention, where energy goes, where attention
that's
flows. And
right.
so
Yeah.
it's like, okay, this is interesting. And I started to get a little bit better. And then, are you familiar, actually, Kara, with a Dr. John Sarno?
No.
Um, okay, he kind of has a following in the back pain world. He
Oh,
wrote
okay.
a New York Times best-selling book called Healing Back Pain,
Oh, nice. Okay.
and it was all about how repressed emotions can cause physical symptoms in the body, like back pain.
I do believe that though. So I've read
Yeah,
other
I
books
figured
that
you would.
imply that same thing, whether it's
Yeah,
Louise Hay or Joe Dispenza or like those peeps. Yeah.
exactly. So, and what makes Dr. Sarno interesting is that he was a bona fide, uh, he was a New York, NYU MD physician, professor of rehabilitation medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And he was essentially saying to all of his colleagues, like, actually, there can be sources of pain that have nothing to do with the physical structure of the body. Now, of course, when I heard that for the first time, I was like, this is complete BS. Like, I've seen my MRI.
Yeah.
It has, I've seen my little disc jutting against my nerves and my spine. Like, how can that not be causing my pain?
Right.
But he started to share these studies around, if you took 100 people who had back pain and 100 people who didn't have back pain, give them MRIs and X-rays and scans and see what's going on in their backs, you'd see roughly the same number of bulging discs and herniated discs and facet joint issues in both
Really?
those populations. Yeah,
Wow.
isn't that surprising?
Yes.
And I started to wonder, like, okay, there's something to this.
Yes.
And I would notice as well how there was a lot of stress, like stress would make my pain worse.
a
And on
hundred
days where
percent.
I could follow the doctor's recommendations to the T, ice my back and do all those things, um, not do much physical activity, I could be in more pain on those days than the days when I was kind of throwing caution to the wind. And Sarno's book was really important for me because it made that link between um, emotions, stress, the pressure that I was putting
Yeah.
on myself to be a cyclist, and my actual physical pain. And that was
So
kind of the
is that
lightning
like
bolt
the
moment.
link to your like pushing through the pain in your book? Is that where you talk about that, or can where does that come from?
Yeah. So the pushing through, essentially, that so many athletes, that's what we are taught. It's
Yeah,
like,
right. No
no
pain, no
pain, no
gain.
gain. Yeah. Um, there's a famous Greg LeMond quote, who's a cyclist. He
Yeah.
says, it doesn't get easier, you just get faster. And um, that's essentially what I had been doing for so long, is trying to push through this, and not just push through pain, but also push through emotions and push through
Yeah, all the
discomfort and push
things.
through all
So
these things and not
so
really
was that
soften
a
around them.
hard mix for you to go like, okay, I have this athlete's mindset and then I have these things happen and then now this physical therapist is telling me like, hey, you're going to have a little pain, and then you're like, wait, that was the mindset
Yeah.
that maybe got me to where I'm at. Like I don't like, how do you
Yeah.
reconcile that? That's like no pain, no gain, yet some pain is actually a
Right.
clue.
Right. It's such a good question. And for me, it comes down to, what type of pain are we talking about, right? Is it the pain of going out on an awesome ride and pushing yourself and doing it from a place of joy
Yeah,
and
what am I
love?
capable of? Yeah.
Yeah, right. Versus, if I don't do this, I'm not enough, or if I fail, people aren't going to like me, or my image is going to be tarnished, and like that kind of pain. Um, but it was a little bit, I would say, it was a bit, kind of a head scratcher to say,
Yeah,
like,
I
oh, wait a
bet.
minute, maybe this pain that I'm experiencing, like, maybe I need to actually push through it. Which, if you tell that to an athlete, I've had
Yeah,
clients where
right.
this is
They're
the
like,
case,
okay,
like,
that means I'll
cool,
like
I'm just
turn it
gonna
up to a
push through.
thousand. Yeah.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, like, to that point, I, after following Sarno's method, essentially becoming aware of the sources of rage and pressure, and starting to respond and do activities in a way that was felt where I felt confident that my back wasn't hurting me.
Yeah, right.
Once I started to do that, my back pain started to go away. And it actually shifted into my mid back. And I was like, all right, 2 years of back pain in the low back just doesn't automatically kind of pop up into the mid back. Like, there's something that I'm onto something here. But what was interesting is I started to, once my back got better, I started to get shin splints when I was running, and then I started to get like arm numbness when I was throwing a softball, and all these other kind of weird things, stomach
Yeah.
issues, panic
Yeah.
attacks, anxiety. And it was kind of like, my mind or my body was telling me, like, until you really start to go inward and do some of this deeper work, you're going to keep having these issues just
Just
cropping
in
up
different parts of your body.
in different parts of your body. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Do you think is there any performance studies or anything that shows like the two mindsets that you talked about, right? Like I'm going to go out on this ride for the joy of it, for what I'm
Mm,
capable of, to challenge myself to see what's magical and what's possible. And I'm going to just push the limits from a place of joy versus
mm,
like, if you don't get up here, you're never going to make it. You're never going to be anything. You're going to be a piece of crap. Like you're never going to achieve your
yeah.
goals. Is there any link to either of those mindsets and your long-term performance?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for in most studies, they show that if you are treating yourself as you would your best friend, you actually perform better, right? You have more capacity for creativity. You have more motivation to reach your goals, right? To get up and go for a ride in the morning and feel excited about it, as opposed to like, oh, this is something I have to do.
Yeah.
But on the other end, what's really interesting is some of the best competitors in the world, like Michael Jordan, Lance Armstrong, they feared losing much more than they enjoyed winning.
Yeah.
They've talked about that. So it's like, it's
Yeah, I
that,
used to work for a positive psychology company, and that was in one of our leadership assessments. Do you hate to lose
mm,
more than you love to win? And we would study that in successful leaders.
yeah, what
And you're like, yeah,
what did they find?
no, I hate to lose 100%, like 90
Yeah,
some percent correlation between
right,
top performing leaders and hating to lose more than loving to win. And I'm like, it's
right.
quite an interesting thing because I've like spent my entire career building that, like competition, climb the corporate ladder, go do all the things. But
Yeah,
when I learned how to celebrate the joy of life, like my life got better. So I'm like, yes, that
yeah.
might correlate to performance, but does it correlate to well being? Does it correlate to living a fulfilled and authentic life? That's maybe a different prompt to consider.
Exactly. And there's actually a wonderful video interview on 60 Minutes with Novak Djokovic, the world famous tennis player,
Yeah.
the best in the world. And he talks about how, when it comes to sports, there's this idea of, just think positive thoughts and, nothing negative. And he's like, you can't do that. You
Yeah.
simply can't do that. We're human beings. Like, I have every single match that I go through. I feel this doubt. I feel this fear. And what separates me from my competitors is my ability to move through that quickly.
That's right.
And so I think, yeah, the whole, it's a really interesting conversation about, performance and pushing through. But yeah.
It's interesting because it's true for me too in the work that I do around this idea of like I had so much fear being I was a chief sales officer of a company, and then to come
Hmm.
out of the spiritual closet and tell people I was a medium, like, oh my god, I
Yeah.
had so debilitating fear, like everybody on LinkedIn's gonna know I'm
Yeah.
cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, oh my god, what's gonna happen, and it was like really scary, but we all have that. And so it's like, regardless of
Mm,
if you're an athlete or in the business world or a stay-at-home mama or anything in between, like learning how to work through fear and learning how to step into a courageous life is such a powerful thing to learn to
yeah.
do, to really learn to step into the most authentic version of yourself and not let the fear debilitate you.
Absolutely. Because when our actions are motivated by fear, I feel like eventually it catches up with
It
us in
does.
some way, shape,
It
or
might
form.
work for a
Right.
while, but
Yeah.
eventually something will happen. You'll crash and burn at some point.
Exactly. And so, a lot of the athletes that I work with, maybe marathon runners who are used to pushing their bodies and they're in their, 30s, 40s, even their 50s, and they're starting to see how, the pain, the plantar fasciitis or the lingering knee issues or back issues are really tied to, their identities as runners and,
Right.
needing to get a certain time in order to feel like they hit their goals. Otherwise, they're not enough. And it can be so liberating when we recognize that the fears that we have about ourselves and our identities aren't actually true. Like when I realized, like, oh,
Yeah.
I can actually go out on my bike, do my best, and not win, and actually be okay, and I'm not going to be judged or
Hmm.
ridiculed or like, oh wait, wow, that's a lot of freedom. Oh, cool. Now I want to do this more.
Yeah, I want to do
And
it
that's
more.
the
Yeah.
paradoxical thing,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Like our friend Kim, our we have both have this friend Kim. She always says to me, like, "Is it true?" And are you 100% sure it's true? Like, you're like, "Oh yeah, maybe not. Maybe that's just my perspective. Maybe it
Yeah.
isn't true. Maybe there isn't actually evidence that backs that. That's just the narrative that I told myself."
Right. And that's what I love that you mentioned that too, because a lot of the beliefs that we have about our bodies come down to that too. It's like, is this true or is that a story?
Yeah.
And it's amazing the stories that we learn about our bodies and what they aren't capable of as opposed to what they are capable
Isn't
of.
that the truth?
Yeah.
What
So
So
there's
how do we tie a bow back to your origin story of how you actually moved out of the pain, or how you moved to living a pain-free life? Like, what
yeah.
happened? Like, what things did you apply or do to like get to that place? That, and then of course that's probably the secret sauce of what you do to help other people too, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So I see it as there are three different pillars, and now I didn't realize this at the time, but in
Yeah, that's
my
how it goes.
training, yeah, exactly. It's like looking back
The
on it,
beings
I
come
see it.
together and you're like, oh, I get it now.
Exactly, exactly. So, one part of it was recognizing that nothing was actually wrong with my body. And this was one that, we are, especially as an athlete, as a cyclist, we correlate physiological issues with physiological problems. My knee hurts, there must be something wrong with it. My back hurts, there must be something wrong with it. And starting to break that link between, you know, just because I feel pain in my body in a place does not necessarily mean that something is actually wrong with it. Now, what I tell clients all the time is, if you you need to have certain things ruled out. You need to go to the doctor and rule out a fracture, a tumor, an infection, etc. But when it comes to a lot of things like herniated discs, bulging discs, torn rotator cuffs, torn labrums, like
Yeah.
surprisingly,
Would you
a
say things
lot
that like fall into chronic, like chronic consistent pain?
chronic consistent pain,
Mm,
if it's either there all the time or it shows up in certain
sure.
activities. Yeah. So really starting to break that link between recognizing there's actually nothing wrong with my back. I'm safe. I'm not in danger if I sit in a chair for an hour. I'm not in danger if I go ride my bike. That's a really, really key one. And
Mm,
getting back to physical activity was so important. Um, the second pillar, I consider that to be mind based, where
okay.
it's like, okay, this
My
education
mindset.
about, yeah, the brain, what pain actually is. And the second level is the body, and it's really this application of, okay, I what are these stories that I'm telling myself about my body, and can I actively change my experience? So if I'm afraid of sitting, can I actually do that? If I am, if I have these bodily triggers where I am, let's say, if I go for a ride that's more than 2 hours, I'm going to get back pain. Okay, can I actually challenge that story and break that link? Because essentially a lot of it comes down to this like Pavlovian conditioning, like
Mm,
Pavlov's
yeah,
dog,
exactly. You're
the
getting
bell
that
that's
response and reward where you say yes, and
exactly.
then you're like, it's true. I keep telling myself it's true, so therefore it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's the knowing and then the action. And then the last pillar, I call it more emotions or spirit or soul, you could call it. And this is the deeper stuff. This is learning how to soften the edges of your personality traits of perfectionism and people pleasing and catastrophizing and worrying. It's learning how to treat yourself with compassion. It's learning how to recognize the emotions that are um, that have you've been stuffing down, and the parts of yourself that you don't want to see.
Mm,
And so it was really a combination of the first two things, learning about pain in the brain. Getting back to physical activity was kind of like the sprint part of this, where it happened pretty quickly. And the ongoing work, the marathon, is really like the self-compassion work, the
yeah.
emotions, the self-awareness. And it's a never ending, always unfolding thing. And that's
Yeah.
essentially what I help people with.
Love that. That's so amazing. So we have like a friend in common who you work
Yeah.
with, and so I don't know if we need to identify him by name, but so then you healed yourself or found a way to work through the connection of your mind, body, soul, and how that
Yeah.
all correlates to your well being and your performance and your capability to get back on the bike and do all of those things. So like, how did that link to then start helping other people? Were people like, "Ooh, wow, what? Wait,
Yeah.
what did you do? You healed yourself? How? Wait, huh?"
Yeah.
Like, is that kind of how it happened, or like, how did you go from that to like helping other people?
Yeah, it's a pretty cool story. And so how it happened was I had my own recovery, and I was 21, 22 at the time when it happened. And I was going to college, and it was kind of like, great. This I'm so grateful for this. I have my life back. This is
Yeah,
amazing. I have no physical restrictions. But I was getting on with my life, and I'd carry around a copy of Sarno's book, and I would give it to people if they were in pain.
yeah,
Just and I would have a conversation with them like, oh, you need to try this out. But it was really on the back burner for a good 7 or 8 years. I ended up working for LinkedIn in the corporate world for 5 years, and was on the, similar to you talking about your corporate world.
yeah.
I was a corporate life.
The corporate climb.
I was a manager of the monetization strategy and operations team at LinkedIn, and as far away from this work as you can
Yeah.
get, probably. But after about I was there for about 4.5, 5 years, and I realized that something else was out there. LinkedIn had a head of mindfulness and compassion programs, Scott
Yeah.
Shute, who's also an inner MBA teacher,
Yes.
and I left and I started to partner with him on some projects outside of LinkedIn. And when I left, I knew I wanted to do something in the, mindfulness space. I didn't know
Yeah.
what. Chronic pain actually wasn't on my radar at all
Isn't that funny?
until
That's wild.
it's that's that's how it happens.
Welcome to
It's
life
my
story.
exactly. Let it unfold for you as opposed to trying to
Yeah,
make it happen.
that's right.
But my mom actually sent me this training program for people to learn how to be coaches in and help people with chronic symptoms in the same way that Dr. Sarno helped me through his book. And I was like, wait a minute, there's coaches who do
People
this,
do
and
this
this is a profession. Like people
and they
actually
make
can
money?
get a certification and they can
It's
make money and
legit?
make a living.
Yeah.
That's cool. It's funny too because my mom was originally the one who gave me Dr. Sarno's book, and of course
Oh,
I just
wow.
I discarded it at first. I wasn't ready. It was about a year before I was ready to actually kind of get the lessons from it. But anyway, I saw that training and I was like, it was just this moment of, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. So I spent all of 2022 training to be this coach and obtained my certification. All the while knowing like this is so cool. Like this feels
Yeah,
like what I'm meant to
it was
do.
lighting you up.
Yeah, and it was actually I hadn't. It was a couple months after I got my certification. I had practice clients, but I wasn't working with anybody in a paid capacity. And I was in Jeremy Hunter's Mastering Your Nervous System course. It was a part of the Inner MBA program.
Yes.
And the very last course, I um, I talked about my recovery, and our mutual friend um, reached out to me afterward,
Oh, I
or
bet. Yeah, I bet
on
he
Zoom,
did. He was like,
like this.
wait,
Yeah, wait,
tell me
I
more.
need to know more
I
about this.
need
Yeah,
this. Yes.
yeah. And he became my first client about a month later, and still to this day has probably the most incredible recovery story of anybody that I've worked with. It was my
Can you,
very
without
first
like
client.
divulging his identity, can you share a
Yeah,
little bit of like that client story of how you helped him transform?
yeah. So he
I don't think he would care if
I
you said his name, but
I don't think so
I
either.
forgot to ask him.
I didn't.
So,
I did too. So I'll respect his privacy, but he had chronic pain for about 30 years throughout his body, and to the point where pain would limit him from walking for more than 5 minutes at a time, or carrying grocery bags, or going for swimming more than 9 or 10 strokes. And he went from that to recently actually running a marathon for the first
amazing.
time, biking 100
Getting back on his
miles,
bike. Yeah.
and just going for epic hikes, and just getting his life back in just amazing ways. And um, his transformation, it's so inspiring because I think he got to a point after 30 years of chronic pain that was you know that was essentially my age at the time.
Yeah.
So like
You're
he'd
like, you
been
have
in
been
chronic
living with
pain.
pain as long as I've been alive.
Exactly. And I'm there, I'm like, can I actually help this guy?
Did you have any
And
of that? Like, oh shit, okay, I know this works for
totally,
me, but I mean, at least
totally.
he's like literally the most loving human ever. So I'm sure he's like, let's try it. Okay. All
I
right.
mean, there was
I'm a little
I
skeptical, but let's try.
I was confident that there was relief that was possible for him
Yeah.
because
Good.
his symptoms matched being mind body, not structural. And
Is that your
um
first thing that you do? Is like rule out that it's structural to make sure you
yes,
don't actually have something that we physically can't fix between the mind body connection?
exactly.
Makes
Because
sense.
if and I can't do that because I'm not a
Right.
doctor, but usually the people who come to me, they've seen countless physicians and
Right.
they've gotten all the tests, and
They're like, would
we're
you
able
like
to
my
rule things
medical
out.
file? It's this big.
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, with this client, he had a really strong inner knowing that this was something for him to explore.
Yeah.
Um, and had a pretty powerful, I would say, spiritual experience of, having kind of been told that he didn't need to search out for the solution, but
Hmm.
that when the time came, the solution would present itself.
Yeah.
And he said, in the meeting when you talked about your story, that was the moment. And yeah, within weeks, what we started to do is question start to make a link between repressed emotions and physical pain and the stories that he was telling himself about his body. Like, oh, I don't heal from injuries. Oh,
Hmm.
I can't do this, I can't do that, and started to really challenge this. And within a short amount of time, he was doing physical activities that he had not done in years,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it created this amazing positive feedback loop that was like, wait a minute, if I'm able to I thought I wasn't able to do this thing, but I'm able to do it. What else can I do? What
Yeah.
else? What else? What else? And so, what's amazing is for him, he would have been content with just being able to walk up the local hill to the park as opposed to needing to drive,
Yeah.
right? Walk, 5-15 minutes. And he kept from a place of, I think, majority from a place of curiosity and joy, started just continue to push these boundaries of what the body is capable of. And
Totally. So
yeah.
you may not know this, but he also is a client of mine. And so I did a reading for him.
Hmm.
I don't know how long ago, while like at least 18 months ago, maybe more, like 2 years, somewhere in that window. And
Mm.
at the end of his reading, they showed me a bicycle. And I was like, they're showing me a bike. They're showing me something about a bike and getting back on a bike. And you're supposed to get back on a bike. And his face went like that, like it was one of his fears he still had, was riding
Yeah.
his bike. Like, and I didn't know he was a cyclist. I didn't really know him at all,
Mhm.
honestly. A friend had one of our mutual friends had sent him my name and said, hey, you should get a reading from Kara. And so I thought it was so interesting, like this link between what his spirit team was telling him and what he was being
Mm.
guided to intuitively from his loved ones in spirit and his guides and angels, and
Mhm.
then what you're working on in his own subconscious. And it's like,
Yeah.
how crazy that those came together at the same time for him.
Yeah. Crazy, or just
Not crazy,
absolutely. Yeah.
amazing. Synchronicity, like the
Yeah.
synchronicity is incredible for him. But like for him to get
Absolutely.
that, like to be doing all the things he's doing with you, and then getting some guidance from his loved ones and spirit team
Yeah.
of like, yes, you can do this. Yes, you can do this.
Yeah.
Like such a powerful like double down for him.
Absolutely. And I think what makes his story and his example so useful and remarkable for people is, like, before he had this physical transformation, he really was in a place of peace
Like
with
accepting
his
that this
symptom.
is what is.
Except, yeah, like, this is what it is. It's not going to change. And not from a place of victimization, but just like real, actual contentment. Like, and that's what allowed this, I think, that stillness is what I would call it. I think is part of what allowed, you know, these messages to come through,
Yeah.
is what allowed this
Yeah.
healing to happen. I think it can be this vicious cycle of trying to put pressure on healing and forcing it. And when we let go, which can be so hard to do, I have
Oh,
my own challenges with it.
so impossible.
But when we do that is when the things that we can never have imagined come
Yeah.
into our lives. And
Yes.
that's the remarkable stuff. That's
Yeah.
that's the stuff of life, the zest of
100% it
life.
is. And I always tell people, like, even if you don't believe in mediums, even if you don't believe in any of those things, like, just think about the science of energy and how we can't,
Yeah.
like, it is in existence. And so allow
Yeah.
yourself some stillness, allow yourself to be in a higher vibrational frequency, which is what happens when we quiet the noise. We get out of very
Right.
low vibrational spaces and we allow ourselves to vibe a little bit higher. If you think about like all the pillows at Home Goods that say like high vibes, like it's like, well, there's science to that says you
Yeah.
can shift your energetic frequency and you can open yourself up to just allowing what might come through for you in that stillness or in that quietness when you shift your energetic frequency.
Exactly. Exactly. And for me as well, like going back to before I had my own recovery, I saw a guided imagery specialist. He was an MD,
Mm,
Dr. Martin Rossman. It was a really helpful experience. And I just remember, I'm laying on this table and I just had this visual of being like on the on a bench, and all this pressure coming down on me. And it was like I was like trying to push against it.
mm,
And
powerful.
yeah, it's like, oh wow, the pressure that, the world is putting on me, but it's really the pressure that I'm putting on
Yeah,
myself is
you're
like,
allowing what you're allowing.
exactly
Yeah.
causing me to be in this pronated state, lying
Yeah.
down.
That's like very similar to what happened to me like when I reached my burnout point in the corporate world. It was like
Mm.
I'm allowing this. I am creating the life that creates this level of stress and chaos and busyness in my life. Those are my choices. No one's telling me I have to do those things. And I had
Yeah.
this innate fear, which I think is a common thing in the corporate world, that if I slow down or if I unbusy my chaos, that it'll all fall apart and I'll lose my job and I won't be a top performer anymore and nobody will like me. Like we have this
Yeah.
like narrative that we tell ourselves, but those are really just lies that we tell ourselves, because when you care well for yourself, you end up bringing your very best ideas and your best strategies and your best thinking to the problems that you're solving in your work or in your life. And so it's just
Exactly.
interesting the way that we can tell ourselves those fear-based lies to keep ourselves in what we know, whether it's good for us or not. It's like, this is
Exactly.
familiar, this is what I know.
Yeah. The discomfort is actually kind of a comfort in a way, because
Oh,
we don't want
totally.
to.
You're like,
It's
I
like, who
know,
am
I
I
know
if
how to
I'm
deal with
operating
this.
differently?
Yeah.
Right.
And I wore it like a badge of honor. I was like, I'm a workaholic it. I love working. I'm so
Yeah.
great. It's like
Yeah.
my identity is wrapped up in there. Like, kind of similar to you and your story of your identity being wrapped up
Absolutely.
as a cyclist. Like, I am a cyclist. No, you are a person who is exceptionally good at cycling.
Yeah. Exactly. And that gets to this idea of, human doing versus human being,
Yeah,
right?
let's talk about that a little bit. Like, how does that
Yeah.
show up for you? Like, what does it mean for you to like be in your authentic self versus like
Mm.
the human doing versus human being? What does that mean for you?
It means everything. I think one of the key pillars of this work is embracing your own authenticity.
Yeah,
So
same.
one of the mm, realizations that I came to in my recovery is, I think the symptoms that we experience that are neuroplastic or mind body, you know, we can see them as, yeah, it's a response to pressure or to false stories about our body, or any number of things. But I also deeply believe that it's a call inward. It's a call
Yeah.
inward to show us where we are limiting ourselves, where we are holding ourselves back, in order to get to our essence, our wholeness, what
Mm,
makes us
mm,
us. And I mean that in a very real practical way, right? If you are
mm-hmm,
hiding from conflict with somebody because you fear what they're going to think about you, they're going to judge you, or if you are um, living in low self-esteem, thinking you're not good enough, it's like these symptoms are there to show you the truth, which is that you are, always have been, and always will be enough, and you can accept yourself for who you are. And I think the most amazing recoveries happen when we just start to radically accept ourselves. And
yes.
that's, to me, what authenticity means. And it's a constant unfolding. It's a constant
100%.
unfolding of that.
It's interesting. I read something recently that talked about the highest vibration, and I was like waiting to lean in and be like, it's love, love, love is the highest vibration there is. And then the person said authenticity. And I was like,
Mm,
whoa, let me process that. Let me think about that a little bit.
mm,
And you can't really be your whole authentic self if you don't love and accept yourself. And so
yeah,
then it clicked with me like, oh, love is the vehicle. Like, loving and honoring who you are is the vehicle to your full authenticity.
I love that. I love that. And I think, something that I've recently come to as well, there can be such a focus on, changing your thinking, or releasing your emotions. And all these things can be helpful, but doing it from a place of lack of acceptance, like something is wrong with me, I need to change myself, I think just creates more and more pressure. And
It does.
one thing that I've really just been trying to practice is to accept my humanity. If I
Mm,
screw something up, if I judge somebody, if something doesn't go my way, I fail at something, somebody doesn't like me, it's like, I can't control this, and this is just part of my humanity, and
yeah.
I'm going to accept it.
It's so true, especially like now, me being in this spiritual space over the corporate business space. You have like this, like you want to be perfect. You're like, oh, I want
Yeah.
to like be I want to be so aware, and I want to be so in tune with myself, and I want all these perfect moments, and then like you realize like, oh, actually the lessons and the learning always show up in the discomfort. They always show
Yeah.
up in something that is there to show us a different way of seeing something. And so
Yeah.
I still have those things happen, like those dark shadow moments, those dark night of the soul moments, those like come to Jesus moments,
Yeah.
and they're there to show me something. And or like where I don't act in integrity with who I authentically am. And that's really what I like to think about, instead of like good, bad, right, or wrong. It's like that thought or that thing that I did, that action or that thought, it was out of integrity with my most authentic self. And
Mm,
so I just recognize, like, okay, I am an imperfect being, and I'm going to give myself some grace. Like, I'm going to give myself some grace to be ungraceful from time to time, and
yeah.
instead approach it with curiosity. Like, where did that come from? Why did I have
Yeah.
that thought? Why did I judge that person? Like, what's going on within me that it feels dysregulated or is not in a place of neutrality or safety or centeredness, because it came from somewhere. And I'm the same. Like, I used to be like so hard on myself. Like, oh my God, why did you do that? You're such a freaking
Yeah.
idiot. Oh my God. Don't like, or when somebody would criticize me, like, hey, you could have done better here. I'm like, I know. And then I was like, I just like take it on, like, oh my God, like and then you realize, like, oh, actually, those are all the moments where we grow. Those are all the magical
Yeah.
moments. They're there for a reason.
100%. And so to that point, actually, I had a situation a few weeks ago where I just found myself falling into like this depressive rut. And, I know all the skills to,
Yeah.
be able to get out of it, and was trying that, but there was something that was just like, it felt really heavy to try to escape. And I kind of let myself be taken over by the depression, which was weird for me to do, but just to not resist it. And it was like a good few days, and I was like, "Whoa, this
Yeah.
this
You're like,
is
okay,
deep, and this is not fun."
universe, like, this is too much.
Yeah, and it showed me so many beliefs that I had about myself that were kind of running the show of, needing things to be perfect
Yeah. Wanting to
and
stay high
not,
vibe all the time. Yeah.
yeah, wanting to stay high vibe, and not really accepting the fact that I can't do things perfectly going forward, but I can trust my ability to make them right looking back. Right? It's like
Mm,
we can't
yes.
live from perfection, but we can trust our ability to make whatever situation right we need to. And all these things that I realized about myself that I never would have had I just kind of like, okay, let me distract myself or let me get
Yes.
out of this in a certain way. It was a
Yeah.
very freeing experience.
And distractions come in when all the clients that I work with, all the work that I do, they come in lots of different ways for different people. So some people, it may
Hmm.
be like over consuming things. It might be, really work hard, workaholic type culture things. But for other people, it's just like, if I focus on other people, I don't have to focus on myself. And that one happens a
Yeah.
lot too. It's like, why is my mom like this? And why is my sister doing this to me? And why are they like, and I'm so mad at them. And they, like, they'll come and they want to get a reading and they want to know, how do I fix my relationship with my sister, because she's so rah all the time or
Mm.
whatever. And my mom, I grew up in a Minnesota, like fishing
Mm.
lakes, all the lakes in Minnesota. And my mom
Yeah.
always said, like, as we were kids, she's like, focus on your own bobber. It's like a little fishing term. It's like,
Mm.
you're gonna miss
Hmm.
the fish if you're watching everybody else's bobber. Like, focus on yourself in your own lane,
Right.
and I
Right.
find that that's so true. Like, when we have these distractions outside of ourselves, it's really just noise, because we're not feeling safe enough to face what's within us. So there's nothing wrong with you. You're not a bad person. Your nervous system is not in a place where it's safe enough to expose yourself to seeing what's the learning for you. That's what I think. I'm really curious
Yeah.
with you and the work you do, if you agree with that.
Yeah. I think it's spot on. Um, for me, I'm thinking about like my own experience and clients. The shame that we have around ourselves
Mm-hmm.
is so potent, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's There was a great quote that I heard from somebody the other day. I'm sure it's an ancient one, but shame is like mold. It thrives in darkness.
Oh, wow.
Shame is like mold. It thrives in darkness. And in my sessions with people, I think there has been what I really, really try to focus on is having a container of non-judgment.
Yes, that's
Whatever
beautiful.
fears, secrets, things that you have that you're ashamed of, like, can you feel comfortable in this space to accept them and
Hmm.
to change your relationship with them?
Yeah, you
Because
can't change them. The
yeah,
situations are there, but can you change your perspective on them?
right. And
Yeah,
the shame exists because you're not talking about
that's
it
right.
in a way.
Because it's
And
living in the
so
darkness.
yeah. And so to me, like, that's such a key part of this is to break these ideas that, if I share this part of myself, I'm going to be dismissed or judged or disliked, and to recognize that actually, hold on, like, I can have my whole self here, and
Yeah,
whatever uncomfortable, shameful things I've done, regrets I have, like, there's actually space for it. I'm
yeah,
okay. It's all okay.
100%. I actually teach that in my Connecting with Spirit course. Like, one of the most powerful things that you can do is to shift out of that energetic state of shame. It's the lowest vibrational emotion you can
Right.
experience. If you
Right.
measure the vibrational frequency of emotions and like put up little, receptors on your
Mm,
brain and go through these
yeah, the
emotions and
Hawkins
study
scale of
them. Yeah,
consciousness.
exactly.
Yeah.
Shame is the lowest one, even lower than anger, fear, all of them. And so it's like, if you can release that and give yourself some grace and space, you can really like change and shift things. But I think
Yeah.
people think I have to go from shame to like full consciousness, like love, acceptance, joy, like, and you're like, well, it doesn't really work like that. Like, you can just start by going, you know what, I'm going to go from like shame to I'm like a little scared. I'm a little scared to talk about this, but maybe,
Hmm.
maybe, and it's like,
Right.
you just shift up that frequency just a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, and eventually you can shift out of those vibrations. But most people aren't
Yeah.
brave enough to try because I think they have to go from like 0 to 1,000 overnight.
Yeah, or they've had these experiences of, like, every time that I've shared something like this, I have been
Yes.
ridiculed or pushed away or disconnected from. That fear of disconnection for humans, that's
Mm-hmm.
everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that is essentially what keeps this stuff stuck. It's like we think that the other person's going to pull away or the world is going to pull away from us. And so giving people an opportunity to recognize, like, no, 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 like, you had this experience or you have this and you're okay. Like, I still see you, like, you're human. I'm and not leaving, like, as a practitioner, like, not leaving
Yes.
them
Yes.
is so,
Yes.
so important, because I think, honestly, like, there's so much healing that can be done if we just allowed for our discomfort, and
Mm-hmm.
we're able to just share these things and allow other people to share them too. When we
Yeah.
pull away, it just creates this disconnection.
I know. It's so funny. I had an old boss once that said he was more along the lines of like project management and fixing issues and problems. And he would always say, sunshine disinfects. Sunshine
Yeah,
disinfects. Let's put a little light on it. And we can't fix stuff
exactly.
we can't see. So let's figure it
Exactly.
out. So it was his way of like giving us
Transparency.
permission to courageously fix the problems instead of trying to cover them up. And I thought
Yeah,
that was
but
such a great analogy to like you were saying about like shame is like mold, and you're like, yeah, and sunshine
yeah,
will disinfect it.
yeah. And to your earlier point, like, if you are not in a place where your system can feel safe,
Yeah.
then the healing can't take place. I don't want to make it that black and white, but, like, it's one
But
thing to
kind
say,
of.
okay, yeah, yeah, it's like sunlight disinfects, and you have to have the container, the space for it. Like, I once had a manager who turned out to be a sociopath,
I think we've all had one
and
of those.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, there's
talk
a
about
few.
the corporate hierarchy. There's a few. But it's like, I didn't feel comfortable. She would say things of, like, you can tell me anything and open up. And
You're like,
a
no,
part
I
of me was
can't.
like, yeah, no, I really can't. Like, you're
Yeah,
saying that, but I don't feel it. Like, we can feel when something's off. So,
totally.
yeah, I think, having that space of, compassion and non-judgment is so vital to create those safe spaces.
Yeah, I'm curious your perspective on this because, like, I think when people are then now going, like, oh, I have this courage, I'm going to go out there, but they're like a baby deer, a new fawn, and they're like,
Mm,
or like a little giraffe or a little, horse, foal that's born, like your legs are really like wobbly because you're still practicing this, this
yeah.
full being, embodying authenticity. You're not quite like firmly in your footing yet. And so
Mm.
sometimes I always encourage people, like, as you're working through these things and you're opening yourself up, like, start somewhere very safe for you. Like, don't start with like,
Yeah.
I'm going to go do a TED talk and tell the whole world, and it's totally okay if like my mom sees this and our relationship falls apart. And like,
Yeah.
maybe don't go like if you're newly practicing living fully authentically or expressing yourself or sharing some very vulnerable things, like maybe start somewhere where it feels a little safer to practice that authenticity. And I'm super curious
100%.
what you think about that with the way that you teach people how to work through things.
Yeah, graded exposure is essentially what you're describing,
Yeah,
and that's
great. Yeah,
something that
exactly. Graded exposure.
when it comes to authenticity, but also physical activity, right? If somebody is new to this idea of neuroplastic pain or mind body symptoms, and they're still afraid of their pain, they're not sure, like they're getting there, but they're not 100% sure,
Yeah.
and they haven't, let's say, they haven't gone for a, one lap run around their local track in years. You can't go out and say, okay, now go run a marathon.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
but it is important to practice that, and not from a place of white knuckling.
Yeah.
So for me, I, for a long time, I was like, oh yeah, I can do this thing. I'm just going to white knuckle through it. And to me, it's like, that is literally just like, I'm going to
Yeah.
like bore through and make it happen and just use so much energy to resist, as opposed to actually sinking into the experience,
That's right.
feeling whatever discomfort is there, and little by little over time building that capacity.
Love it.
So yeah, I'm there
Okay.
with you.
Well, I do this with every single one of my podcast guests. It's called like favorite things. So it's just rapid fire and you just tell me like whatever comes to
Ooh,
mind. So no
let's
pressure,
do
there's
it.
no wrong answers. Okay. What
Cool.
is your, so we're going to segue into this and then I want to talk a little bit about how people can work with you. Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
Sounds good.
Okay. So what is your favorite food?
Uh, really good pasta.
Oh, nice. Love it.
Yeah.
What is your favorite place to travel? Or if somebody just dropped a boatload of cash and you could take a private plane somewhere, where would you go?
A small little town on the southwest coast of Ireland called Dingle.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
I've never been
Yeah.
to Ireland, but now like
Oh,
we're big golf families, and with Rory McIlroy winning the
yeah.
Masters, oh my god, I
Right.
cried. And now he's like, "Well, I have to go to Ireland now."
Incredible last holes of the Masters. Oh my
Oh my
gosh.
god, I couldn't. I just couldn't. It was
I
insane. Though I feel bad though, like because my husband was there and my brother-in-law was there, and we were watching the
oh
Masters
wow.
together. And it was like he was up by 4. It was not a lot of drama. He was going to the back 9, and I was like, like I don't want him. I want Rory to win, but I would love a little more drama. And then he like
You
double
got it.
bogeyed and whatever. And my husband is like, Kara, do you have that much power? I'm like, I don't think so, but I feel bad. I might have jinxed him. I'm like, dang it. But it made for a very eventful Masters.
Gosh, it did.
Yeah,
Gosh,
it
it
did.
did.
Okay, what's your favorite holiday?
Oh, favorite holiday. Um, that's a great question. Time of year, it doesn't really matter as long as I am with good friends and good people
Oh, you know
and
what?
my
No one's
family.
ever said that.
Yeah,
Yeah, love
there you
it.
go.
Okay, do you have a spirit animal or that shows up for you for signs and things like that? Because I know you're also a spiritual person.
It changes actually from time to time.
Same.
I feathers show up, like, it kind of gets my attention when there are feathers. And yeah, so not necessarily an animal, but feathers.
Birds of a feather, all the birds. They
Yeah,
drop
yeah.
feathers. Love it. What is your favorite thing about what you do for a living?
Mm. Helping people recognize that they can be more than they ever thought they were.
Oh,
Not just from a pain perspective, but also just from a freedom perspective in life.
beautiful.
Yeah.
What brings you profound joy?
Mm. Seeing somebody who didn't believe that a transformation could be possible getting back to their favorite activities and living their life again. I know it's like, I'm not even just saying that because, like, it's my profession, but it literally is like one of the most amazing things that I witness.
I love
It's
that.
beautiful.
Okay, so if somebody is experiencing chronic pain and they're like, okay, I'm not a professional biker, but can I work with you
Yeah.
too? Do you have programs
Yeah.
for me? Like, walk people through like your coaching programs or your courses or like how people could work with you. Cause I love the way that you show up and serve for people.
Thank you. Yeah, so happy to share. There's a few different ways, and you can go to my website, which is painfreecomeback.com, and get some more information about these. I have a everything from a intensive one-on-one program where we'll work together for 3 months and really help you resolve your chronic symptoms and get back to your favorite activities. I also have an online program that I've co-created with a fellow athlete who made an amazing recovery. It's called the Pain Free Comeback Program, and it's a self-service program that'll essentially walk you through all the steps that you need in order to make a comeback. If you're interested in learning more about this work and asking like, does this actually apply to me? If you go to painfreecomeback.com, on the very top of the page, you'll see a free assessment link. And that is essentially, that will ask you a series of questions that were developed by the chronic pain physicians, the sports medicine physicians that I trained with, in order to help you rule in mind, body, or neuroplastic symptoms. So that's a fantastic place to start because it'll also give you a sense of what you need to do in order to resolve your symptoms and why you haven't healed yet. And it'll give you concrete action steps. So those are the things
Nice.
that I would highlight.
Okay, so another question popped into my mind, and I have to ask it now
Please.
because I think it's there. So you're talking about like physical pain, but does this methodology and this framework that you use does it also work for people that are like suffering addictions or things that they can't quite
Mm,
control? Have you ever had somebody to come their way that's s- like a smoker or a pain, addicted to pain pills or like whatever it might be? Have you had
yeah,
anybody like you tried these types of techniques that are in the substance space?
it's a really good question. So there are, and this is getting into the theory of the symptoms a little bit, but in the same way that addictions can be distractions from certain emotions
Right.
or certain things we don't want to
That's
see
why
about
I thought about
ourselves.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, the pain can be a distraction too. And there's some really interesting research that shows that anxiety, depression, pain all operate in very similar neural circuits in the brain.
Mm,
And they can essentially be the underlying reason can be the same for each of those. I think addiction falls into that bucket as well. And it's interesting too because I've stories, not necessarily clients of mine, but stories of people who said, once I got sober is when I started to get back pain, or
yeah,
kind of
totally.
one
Other
thing is
things
replaced
showed
with
up.
another.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's absolutely applicable because at the end of the day, what we're doing is helping you develop more self awareness and essentially meet the part of yourself that you're maybe a little bit scared to meet, and
Yeah,
doing that, bringing that sunlight in, essentially,
that's right. You
that
meet the part of
disinfectant.
you you're resisting.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
so great. Well, thank you so much for coming. It was so fun. I will drop your link to your website, maybe that assessment link too. Granted, they can get it when they go on the site, but I'll drop some of those things in the show notes for people so that they can connect with you and follow along and see if maybe they'll want to do some work with you. So I really appreciate you
Perfect.
coming.
Yeah, thank you, Kara. It was really a great conversation. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Thank you so much.